When I say the gimmicks, what are they? Well, we're deferring payments to schools. We say we owe them the money, but we pay them a year late, and that's about $10 billion. The economic recovery bond was celebrated as some great tearing up of credit cards. It was just a longer-term credit card. It was borrowing. We still owe $7 billion on that, and we got to pay it. Loans from special funds, we got to pay them back. We take from funds that legally are for one purpose, and we throw them into the general fund. You got to pay them back. Unpaid cost to local government schools and community colleges for state mandates, 4.3. You got to pay them. We've been delaying them, but we owe the money. Underfunding of Prop 98, that's about $3 billion. And then borrowing from local government 1A, we owe 1.9 there. Deferred medical costs, payroll, delaying the payroll for June. Deferred payments to CalPERS, which we got a little holiday there, and then borrowing from the transportation fund. That's 34.7. That's what I call part of the wall of debt. Go to the next slide, you'll see the wall of debt. The 48.2 over here, that is what the total debt will be if we issue the general obligation bonds and the lease purchase bonds that are already authorized. There's 48.2 sitting out there. Then the bonds sold, of course, they're already sold, and we're paying interest on that. Let's go to the next slide. This is another aspect of debt. This is what we're someday going to have to pay every year. Interest on the unemployment insurance debt. That's $500 million this year and every year into the future because we have this gigantic unemployment insurance debt. We borrow from the federal government $10 billion. So now they're telling us we got to start paying interest, not paying down the principal, just interest. That's $500 million. When we issue that debt that I showed you on the last slide, that $48 billion in general obligation and lease, that's going to cost us $3.2 billion out of the general fund to service that new debt that we are authorized and will eventually issue. The 9.9 is the Proposition 98 maintenance factor, and what that means is we are obligated to increase on a yearly basis by $9.9 billion the money the state has to pay to local schools. We don't do that, immediately. We're going to do it in stages, but that is a real obligation that over time the state has to deal with. So when I say there's a wall of debt out there, yes, we've got some more revenue, but we have a lot of obligations. And I don't want to have California in the position that we see in Washington, where they're up against the debt limit. You have the Republicans who want to maintain massive tax cuts for the richest people. You have Democrats who won't face the music and cut back entitlements. The truth is, both have to get out of their comfort zone and come together to create a balanced spending program for America. Here in California, we actually have a balanced spending proposal. We've already taken half of it and put it into law, which is amazing, but we got another $10 billion or so to go. Let me just put up the last slide here. That debt, I just rounded off 34.7, which comes from the gimmicks of the last decade. By my plan, by the time we get to 2014, we're going to pay it down to $6 billion. If you adopt the Republican deficit, that 35 will go up. It'll go up because they have a deficit this year. They leave. It's probably $8 or $9 billion. Next year, you'll carry it forward. We'll have a $20 billion deficit next year. So that debt doesn't go away. This is a program that's honest. It's all laid out there. And I think it makes a lot of sense for California. And I'd like our state to maybe send a message back to Washington. Yes, you have to cut, and you have to be willing to pay the tax revenues and run a reasonable and efficient government. That's the proposal on the May revise, and I'll be glad to take any questions that you have.
The revenue, the realignment proposal?
Yes, crucial. The realignment saves money, and it does something about the 70% recidivism rate, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
So you would redirect some of this considerable amount of the additional revenue into the realignment program, right?
Well, most of it's going to 98 if you go back and where it...
But even some of the realignment income taxes go into the schools, right?
Right, some of that will. But the main thing on realignment, I want to make sure that we fund when we move state inmates to the local level, we want to make sure we have enough money to handle that.
The reason I asked that question is that you were, I won't say bragging, but pointing out that the level of state spending as a result of, as a percentage of personal income would be falling to 72. But isn't that a little bit disingenuous if money is being sent around the general fund into local governments and schools? That's not counted in that, is it not?
That's probably, I would say, well, let me see here. Anna, do you want to?
If you look at, if you add
go to the
those, if you look
microphone?
at total fund spending.
Well, wait, this thing is going to go up and down, okay? That's true. And the economy's pretty depressed. So that's why it drives down. As the economy gets better, that'll come up. But it is a measure that we're not way out of line here. But maybe you can explain it better.
And if you adjust for realignment, it's still at historically low levels. It's only been at that level in the last 30 years, about 3-4 times.
And by the way, that big notch up there was the bailout, too, when back in my era.
One more question. Your own projections here have general fund revenues going up by almost 25%, or actually almost 24% between now and in 4 years, up to the level of $119 billion. That would seem to say the Republicans have a point about having some sort of spending limit so that we just don't see a new surge of revenue. It gets bounced.
Yeah, we need a spending limit. We definitely should put a cap in, and that would give the voters a real assurance that to the extent there's more money, we're going to pay down debt.
So you're willing to have a spending limit as part of the package that goes to the voters?
Yes, I want to spend.
How about the pension reform that they also want? Are you willing to have that as well?
Well, we're going to propose pension reform. That's more contentious, and I'm told there's going to be a lot of pension reform on next year's ballot anyway. So one way or the other, I think we're going to get whatever pension reform.
When do you want to have this election?
As soon as possible.
I mean, like in the fall?
I'd like it. That's the earliest. I think that's the more logical time.
Governor, you know there have been a couple of proposals out there, maybe proposals, maybe just talk, since you put something out forward from Democrats about maybe the cuts happen in Republican districts first if they're not willing to accept the taxes. Senator Steinberg says maybe locals should be able to tax themselves, which could be a way around here. What do you think about that?
Well, I want to look, when you start localizing reductions, that I think could exacerbate partisan bitterness and might not enjoy the respect and confidence of the voters. So I'd want to look very carefully at that. I have not seen what the proposal is. The second point, if we don't get tax extensions and if we have the future that I'm projecting, there will be all sorts of new tax initiatives, whether it be the Steinberg local option tax or some of those that some of the unions have proposed. If I proposed a stable, balanced program, if that is defeated in the legislature, or even if it's defeated by the voters, then there will be other efforts to deal with this wall of debt, structural deficits. And I've often used the phrase from Thomas Hobbes, bellum omnes contra omnes, or rather, bellum omni contra omnes, war of all against all. It will be, everyone will retreat to their corner and devise strategies on what California does. This takes into account the partisan differences, and I put it together as best I think it can be done. And if this thing falls apart, then there will be all manner of untoward outcomes and animosities and divisions. I think it'll be very divisive for California. I think we'll flounder. It will not be good for the credit rating. It won't be good for the business climate. I think this makes a lot of sense, and that's why most of the business groups in California support this.
Governor, how do you propose to capture the tax revenues between now and when you could have a special election? Are you asking the legislature to approve these taxes outright?
Well, yes, of course. That's what I said back in March in Riverside. I don't know which one of you were there, but it's been covered. What else can we do? I had a plan for June. Then we get the election, and then we get the tax vote. Today we have to have the vote by the legislature, then a vote by the people.
Schools have said that a fall election would be problematic. Would you agree to delaying this election until June?
I don't think that's a good idea, and we have a way to phase it out that could work. We have a thought on how to do that, but and that would be part of the discussion with the Republicans. And remember, there has been some people saying, why don't I just get the taxes without a vote? Now, I've been talking to a number of Republicans, and I haven't heard one say that they want to give taxes without a vote. In fact, one of the Republicans said...
Oh,
what's that?
cell phone.
That's what's doing it. Okay.
That's I don't have a cell phone. Anyway, I do have an iPhone, but I pay for it. One of the Republicans said that he does not want a cap on spending. He doesn't want pension reform. He doesn't want regulatory reform. He wants a straight-up vote on taxes, and he wants to lead the campaign against the taxes.